Greetings and salutations, it's me, Colin Moriarty. I hope that this video finds you well today. I'm doing something a little bit different today in that I'm putting up a Let's Play instead of an episode of Side Quest as I usually would on Mondays. And the reason for that is really, well, it's quite simple. I hurt my back and my neck pretty severely last week and into the weekend when I was sleeping, believe it or not. So that caused some problems for me in terms of being able to kind of pay attention. Let me explain this to you. I slept in the wrong position. I woke up with this pinch in like my upper neck. It almost felt like it was in my head and into my shoulder. And I tried to go about my business, but it was hard for me to sit at my desk for too long or concentrate or write. And I actually had this pretty robust episode of Side Quest going on. I'm not going to tell you what the episode was about because I still want to pursue that episode in the coming weeks. But it required some reading and lots of research and, you know, writing a script and all that kind of stuff. And I just ran out of time. And now that I'm feeling a little bit better, I wanted to at least put something up for this Monday so that you guys aren't without anything, as I know that there are tens of thousands of you that look forward to Side Quest every week, and I don't want to let you down. And I don't like posting, or not posting things rather, unless I let you know first that I'm not going to post. So this is a little bit different, but it's kind of like a mini review / Let's Play of a game called Dead Cells. And Dead Cells is kind of a Metroidvania in at least aesthetic and style, but it really isn't a Metroidvania. It's also kind of a roguelike, but it really isn't, I guess, purely a roguelike because it's not turn-based and all of that kind of stuff. It actually looks too good and moves too action-oriented, too fluidly to really be in that genre either, but it really is kind of like a Metroidvania roguelike kind of game. I think that's the best way to describe it. And it's actually been out for a year or so, a little bit more than that actually, on PC in early access format, in which it sold, by the way, a staggering 750,000 copies in that format. And basically what ends up happening here is that this game is kind of released on PC. I don't play PC games. I know some of you do, but I don't, so I'm kind of out of the loop. And then, lo and behold, this thing is coming to console, to PlayStation 4, to Xbox One, and I think to Switch as well. And the publisher sent me an early copy of the game, and I started playing it this weekend when I was kind of propping myself up at a 90-degree angle on one of my couches with a bunch of pillows so that I could actually, like, sit without pain. And I ended up playing it for not very long, for like 5 or 6 hours. And this playthrough represents one of those playthroughs. And by the way, I actually recorded this playthrough and did the VO for it at the same time, and then realized that I had the wrong microphone hooked into the wrong recorder. I have a 2-mic setup so that I can record podcasts with people. Didn't realize it till the end, but the gameplay was so good, and I actually got further in the game than I ever had before in my brief time with it, that I thought it would be a shame to kind of scrap the gameplay itself and, you know, do it all over again. So I'm just sitting at my computer watching it as I do the VO, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So yeah, it's now, you know, by the time you're seeing this, it's either about to be out or it is out on the console of your choice, as well as on PC. And it comes from a French studio named Motion Twin. And they're an interesting studio. They're in Bordeaux in France. They're an interesting studio for multiple reasons. They were actually founded in 2001, and, you know, I was reading about that. I never heard them, and I've been in this industry for a long time. I joined the industry the next year in 2002. And I didn't really know anything about them, so I read into them, I read about them, and this is really their first product, like their first major game. What they're better known for, I think, is like some contract work, as well as like you making tools and middleware and stuff for game designers to use and for game developers to use. I think that's kind of where they cut their teeth, but this is their first product. And the other interesting thing about them, as Kotaku had written about recently and that had been circulating around, is that they're actually like an employee-owned developer, which is incredibly rare. That means that, like, they basically split the income, they split the bonuses, there's no real power structure there. That's completely untenable and unworkable at most studios, big and small, but for them it seems to work. And with 750,000 copies sold in pre-release, and I'm sure they're going to sell more than that now that the game's on console and it's in its final format, those guys are going to be rolling in cash no matter how they split it. So when I did the original VO for this, I went ahead and talked a little bit about what was going on and everything, but the basic crux of the game is that, you know, it's roguelike in one major way, in that it's permadeath, which is a major component typically of, you know, not always, but typically of that genre. And you're not upgrading the main character's statistics per se. You're not carrying over any of that from game to game. What you're carrying over are specific upgrades and skills, etc., a whole cache and suite of skills that are garnered by using what are called dead cells, hence the game. And you can see that in the bottom right corner, there's a blue orb with a number next to it, and underneath that is a gold kind of orb with a number next to it. The blue orb is a dead cell, and that's how many dead cells you have. And in between stages, which are randomly generated, or procedurally generated anyway, based on where you are, So you're going to get different layouts. No two layouts, I think, are really ever going to be the same completely, whether it's because of where items and weapons are, or whether it's the way things are laid out, etc. When you get to the interstitial stages between stages, you're able to spend those cells, kind of unload them. So in that way, it's very similar to Bloodborne or Dark Souls and other games of its kind, where you're not just earning experience points and upgrading as you go and then saving your game and moving on. You have to at least get to certain points in the game, like these hub worlds that allow you to unload the dead cells. And if you die in between, getting to the next world, and you say you have 30 cells, you lose those cells. The money underneath, the gold circle, indicates or represents a gold coin. And the currency here is not nearly as useful as the cells, but you're able to use it to kind of open doors, buy specific upgrades and weapons and items, etc. And you actually lose those when you die as well, although there are skills you can unlock that allow you to retain a certain amount of money. So when I die, I retain 6,000 gold if I had, or up to 6,000 gold. So here you can see that I'm finding one of these upgrades, and these upgrades are really important. You're able to upgrade brutality, tactics, and survival. And those colors, the purple, the green, and the red, they indicate here on the bottom left. Like you see my sword is red, mapped to square. My bow is mapped to triangle, but it's purple. Those colors interact with the types of weapons that you use, and you're able to find these upgrades that are randomly strewn around. Sometimes you find lots of them, sometimes you find almost none of them, that not only give you a certain bump in hit points, a permanent bump in hit points only for this playthrough, but it allows you to strengthen by 15% the strength and the usefulness of one of those weapons. And so you always want to dump everything into red, because red is your main weapon. It's your sword. You're going to be using it the most. The multipliers based on percentages are going to go down the more you use red, but your percentage in terms of strength is going to stay the same. So you're going to want to keep dumping as much as you can into that. And here I'm dumping cells that I encountered here. In the previous stage, I'm dumping these cells permanently into things that I can unlock. So you see here that I can unlock now a random melee weapon instead of just having the starting melee weapon. I can unlock more health from my flask and able to use it more often. And on the bottom there, as I was scrolling down, are some weapons that once unlocked will randomly spawn in the environment as I play, but will not spawn until I unlock it, if that makes any sense. Here, this next person in between stages you encounter allows you to use mutations. And mutations, alter your ability to play or what you do. So I always go down to this Igder, I can't even see it here, Igder Oris Leox. I don't know what the hell that means. Maybe it's something dirty or terrible in Latin or something. But that basically revives you if you're killed. It revives you from a premature death. It is by far the most useful of the augments that I've encountered. And finally here, you're able to not only refill your health to maximum, but you're able to refill your health flask, which you can see on the bottom left of the screen, mapped to the L1 button here in the PlayStation 4 version. And that's useful to heal yourself, and you're obviously going to need to do that because the game gets increasingly more difficult. So we're loading the next area, the Promenade or the Promenade of the Condemned. You might see the time on the bottom. It says current time, 3 minutes, 59 seconds. It's somewhat arbitrary tracking time in this game, but it's somewhat not. There are specific areas of each map that you can only get through, and I think we'll encounter one in a little while. If you encounter it within a certain amount of time from when you spawned and started, not only this stage in general, but actually, in fact, the entire game. So you'll encounter a thing that says, like, this door closed 8 minutes ago, and you know that you're very, very late. The great thing about this run and why I didn't want to scrap it, though, is because I kept finding upgrades here. Now, here I don't have the option to upgrade red, so I go with the upgrade that gives me more hit points, and so that would be green. And so that gives me a 60% hit point bump, so that's a pretty significant hit point bump, bringing me from, 475 to, I can't even see on the bottom, 700. Sorry, I'm watching it on Premiere, by the way, so the screen is really small here on Adobe Premiere. So I'm fighting through enemies in the second area, and the enemies get a little more daunting. This enemy, for instance, with this skeleton, or the swords, the skeleton with the swords, the first truly challenging enemy. There's also a magician enemy that we'll encounter a little later that's quite annoying, but a lot of the enemies are kind of fodder, not anything too crazy, but very similar to Bloodborne and Dark Souls. It's a game where you don't want to rush. You don't want to kind of get ahead of yourself and get too crazy, because you start making mistakes, and that's how the wheels kind of fall off very rapidly. And it's frustrating in that regard for me anyway, because I actually really like Bloodborne, and I like difficult games. As you guys know, I really eat up difficult side-scrolling games. I love them, and so this is right up my alley in that regard. But at the same time, I like playing fast. I like playing with a little bit of reckless abandon. A lot of people notice that when I play Mega Man, which is a game I play very well, that if I get hit, I'll just run through an enemy and get hit again just to keep, because I don't really need the health in that particular game. I'm just trying to get through. I want to be, not only elegant and quick, but I want to just, I want to be quick, keep moving and make it fun in that way. So I have to kind of temper those expectations and that skill set in this particular game, because you can't play like that here or you're just going to die very quickly. So as you saw there, I got another brutality upgrade, which is great for my weapons. These spikes here are not instant kill like you might find in, say, Mega Man or Castlevania, but they do a ton of damage. And by the way, these little yellow things, these almost pentagram-looking things that you encounter pretty often on stages, as you'll see when I pull up the map and whatnot, you can use those to teleport from one area to the next very rapidly. And since you're constantly pulling up your map and you're constantly looking at where you are, those teleportation devices, while they seem plentiful and almost too plentiful in the beginning, are actually, you know, perfectly plentiful in getting you around in an easy way, since the game does remember what enemies you've killed and they don't respawn, and obviously you can't revisit places you've already been unless you die. So it just makes getting around these vacant kind of areas like this a little easier. And also you can see that we're going through tons of doors. You can press R1 on the PlayStation 4 controller to open them quietly and get the jump on an enemy in that way, or you can smash through them with your weapon, which stuns the enemies on the other side, which is a preferable thing in case you're encountering any difficult enemies. You'll notice that on triangle, like I said earlier, map to triangle is my bow. That's the starting bow. I don't really use that weapon very often. I don't think it's very useful. Some people do, in reading kind of things online, specifically on the Steam forums where there's a lot of interesting insight into the game. People enjoy some of these weapons, but I don't. I actually don't find the particular triangle weapon that I enjoy the most, which is, I don't think in this playthrough, which is a frost attack that can be used in an unlimited manner that freezes temporarily enemies, and then when the enemies kind of come out of the frozen state, they're actually slowed down pretty significantly. So you can see things get a little hairy with the combat, and interestingly, there is one advantage to continuing to attack even if you're attacked and injured, and instead of backing off, and that is that very similar to Bloodborne or similar to some fighting games like, say, Marvel vs. Capcom, some of the damage you take is represented in an orange bar instead of kind of just disappearing off of your bar completely, and if you attack an enemy, you'll be able to gain some of that back, so it's a bit of a risk-reward kind of situation in this particular game, which is fun. That's totally fine. I enjoy that. Not always a good idea to take advantage of it. But one of the things that I don't like about the game, or one of the things that I don't want to say I don't like, but it's just not quite what I'm looking for in this particular kind of game, whether it's just a straight Metroidvania, which this isn't, or more of a roguelike kind of hybrid, which this more is that you're not gathering experience, you're not permanently strengthening your character. So it's a little different from similar games like, say, Rogue Legacy that I really enjoyed some years ago, where you're making your character stronger kind of in an active sense. So you have that feeling of power, and you feel like you're really getting further and further into the game. You're not really getting that in Dead Cells. You're not strengthening yourself except for the upgrades that we've been finding and kind of giving yourself a better percentage or a better mathematical chance of encountering certain items and certain weapons and stuff that you need by using your Dead Cells to invest in those various things in the interstitial stages. So I'd rather a game, you know, kind of similar to another Metroidvania, more straightforward, although procedurally generated Metroidvania that was released recently called Chasm, where you're kind of strengthening your character in a more literal, in a more straightforward and kind of understandable way. So that makes me a little frustrated here because a little too much is left up to chance in Dead Cells, which makes it not quite as intriguing to play from my perspective. Now, some of you, if you're more into this genre, might disagree, and I'm sure that plenty of you do, that this is more what you're looking for. But for me, I'm really looking for more of a statistical challenge that can eventually be overcome, as opposed to playing the same stages over and over again. Because, as I said earlier, death is permanent, so you're going to be going through this game many, many times in order to get just incrementally further, to get a little bit more in terms of your Dead Cell wallet. And then you're going to kind of dump those into different upgrades and slowly get better. And there's something very rewarding about that in its own sense, and there's certainly a lot of bang for your buck in a game like that, where you're not going to cruise through it, you know, out of nowhere, and that's really cool. But you know, it's not quite what I'm looking for, but again, something that you guys might be more into as well. So we're continuing through here, this Promenade area. And this area is interesting because it's got both depth and width, so you'll find areas in the game that are smaller, like the more self-contained, like the intro area, for instance, and then as we go to the map at various points, you'll see that there's a lot to really enjoy about exploring this map. And by the way, you don't have to explore the entire map, although it really behooves you to do so. You can skip through and move really quickly through the maps, especially as you get stronger. I'm not at that state yet because I played through it maybe 10 times, and there are obviously also areas like this where you can't get through unless you have a certain weapon. or certain item or certain augment, and we just don't have it yet, so we can't see the entire map. It must be some sort of double jump or triple. I already have double jump, I think. Some sort of triple jump maybe, or some sort of grappling or hook or something. I don't really know quite what we're looking for in that regard. So there's reasons to explore, but there's also kind of reasons or carrots at the end of the stick to rush through. And as I was saying earlier, those doors that you encounter when a certain amount of time have passed, well, that's certainly an interesting reason to run through. Although based on the things I've been reading online in preparation for playing the game and kind of just learning about maybe what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, a lot of people feel like there's no reason to really rush ever, that the rewards on the other sides of those locked doors aren't really worth your time. And here's one of them right now, actually. So you see here that the door was sealed 8 minutes and 25 seconds ago. So if we moved much quicker through the game to get to that point, we would get through that door and I think have a new small area to explore with presumably some sort of special item or weapon on the other side. Instead, we're going to teleport to a new part of the map and continue our eastward trek through the map. Again, fighting lots of familiar types of enemies. Those bad enemies can be really annoying if you don't kill them instantaneously. They can kind of zoom right into you, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass. But everyone basically has their own pattern, and as you can see, the stars appear on top of their heads, indicating that they're stunned. So you kind of want to try to take advantage of that as best as you can as well. These enemies kind of just throw bombs at you, and they can actually throw the bombs through walls, which makes them frustrating. And kind of the basic green enemies that we've been encountering throughout the duration of this video so far. You know, they're annoying as hell too, but you just want to take care of them quickly. They jump into you eventually. But a lot of enemies, when they're about to do their attack, as you can see, an exclamation point and a yellow exclamation point appears on the screen that kind of indicates to you that it's coming and that you should prepare yourself. So we found another upgrade there, as you can see. And you can see that the upgrades are tracked in the bottom left corner of the screen. You see 522 in red, purple, and green digits. Those basically indicate the corresponding colors and numbers that I was mentioning earlier. And again, red is the name of the game here. You want to increase that brutality statistic for the handheld square mapped weapon that you're using, because that's obviously the primary and most important thing. And there's a lot of people out there that suggest that you should never ever use anything but red unless you have no option, because sometimes you don't find an upgrade that gives you a red option. So we're continuing to cruise on through. Collecting more cells. We have 20 cells now and quite a bit of money as well. 12,500 plus gold, which we're going to spend most of in a little while to just kind of give ourselves a little bit of an extra advantage with a merchant that we find, which comes in handy in the boss fight, which you're going to see. I've encountered this boss fight several times. I think it's one of the first boss fights in the game. Might be the very first one, depending on the order you go in. I'm not really sure. But I've struggled with it. I just didn't, he gets way stronger and does a lot of attacks, becomes very aggressive. You really have to dodge and whatnot. So every little bit helps in doing him just a little bit more damage. Sometimes you encounter items like this. We have the Spartan sandals as one option. And we take them here. We're not going to hold on to them for long, but sometimes you don't have to take anything. Those randomly kind of generated, not storefronts, but kind of options that you encounter are typically for your L2 and R2 mapping. And right now I have on R2, I have an ice grenade. I have nothing mapped to L2 yet. We will shortly. And those things are helpful. They all have cooldowns and stuff, unlike the weapons that are attached or mapped to the square and triangle buttons. Another thing to really enjoy about the game is the art. I mean, the art is just stunning. It's just really beautiful. It's a really, really beautiful game to behold. And I really enjoy looking at it. I continue to be incredibly impressed with every new section I get. And that's kind of one of the alluring things, is you just press a little bit more forward to see the next area, to see the next batch of enemies, to know what you're encountering next. And, there's no denying that, even though this isn't what I would prefer, that there's no denying that it's got that special something. And I know that it's pretty reductive to compare this once more to Bloodborne and once more to Dark Souls or Neo or games like that, but there certainly is that spirit within the game, and it's not unique to those games, and it's not unique to this game, of course, but there's that spirit in there about just seeing what's next, just seeing what's around the bend, pushing your luck just a little bit further. But what's ironic about it too is that it's almost harder than Bloodborne or Dark Souls in the sense that you can't really withdraw with in this case your dead cells to upgrade your character. You can kind of withdraw at will in those other games, kind of back out and go to specific, to go to, I guess, the Hunter's Dream in Bloodborne to dump your stuff. But here, you have to you kind of get to the end and get to these interstitial areas here that we've encountered. So with my 26 cells, I'm going to dump those into Health Flask 3, which will be a permanent upgrade once unlocked. It's very expensive, as you can see. And the reason for that is specifically because right now I can use my Health Flask twice because I have Health Flask 1 and Health Flask 2, which I unlocked pretty early on in my journey. But this time around, I want to be able to use it a third time, so it's going to take some know-how to do that. I took another Augment, which increases my overall hit points 30%, which is incredibly useful. And finally, I'm able to fill my Health Flask and restore my HP, so I have full hit points, 30% Augment. I also got the Augment earlier that allows me to be revived, as I said earlier, and a map to L1, 2 Health Flask uses. So as we go to the very beautiful Ramparts, which is a gorgeous section with a setting sun, or maybe a rising sun, but I think a setting sun, we're going to be, good to go. We're going to be in great shape. So the fun part about this section is that it's pretty much all about left and right movement, with some exceptions. The spaces in between towers, you might be tempted, as I was in the beginning when I first got here the first couple times, to jump down and just explore, but you'll fall down plenty of holes if you do that. So you want to be careful and kind of wait for chains and ladders and other indications that there's actually something below you, because the screen is only showing you a limited amount. So we're cruising on through, fighting more familiar enemies. As you see here, we've been fighting these archers and these other green kind of strange foes for a while. But this is here on the bottom right that's shooting me is the magician enemy I was mentioning earlier, really obnoxious enemy that you want to take care of as soon as possible. Also, these purple skeleton enemies with shields are annoying. You can't hit them from the front, so you have to bait them towards you and jump over them and try to flank them. Yeah, these magician enemies cause some problems for me. They're not necessarily going to kill you, but they're certainly going to delay you, let's say. Pardon me. So we're going to teleport back up to the surface here of the Ramparts and continue in an eastward direction. Again, the background is just beautiful. A lot of beautiful touches as they made this game and created this game. Another time-sensitive barrier. We're way late, too, in 6 minutes and 54 seconds, so we're quite tardy to get that through that door. But there's so much aesthetically to like here, and the music obviously is quite nice as well. So a nice tip with the arrow enemies is to duck under their arrows. I don't do that very often, as you can see. And here we found a blueprint, and it's a rare blueprint. So one of the cool things that you can do in the game as well, as you saw earlier, dump your dead cells into various upgrades. And some of those upgrades, specifically the armor, the shields, the weapons, some of the augments, etc., you're going to find randomly generated out of dead enemies, like we just did there. And if you can get back in one piece to the interstitial stage after finding those upgrades, you'll be able to permanently be able to buy into that upgrade. So we just found a shield upgrade, for instance, and now that shield upgrade, next time we go to the interstitial stage, is going to show up in that dead cells chart, and then we're going to be able to dump our cells at our leisure into unlocking that. Once it's unlocked, then it will be randomly generated by enemies at a greater clip in order for you to actually use instead of just a blueprint. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing. And even though you don't get experience points for killing the enemies, you do get gold. And gold is obviously not nearly as useful as the other currency, the dead cells currency in the game, but you still want to use it. As you're going to see, we're going to spend quite a bit of it in a little while, and you do get gold for every enemy you kill. So you just want to be thorough, and it's also a way to just kind of let yourself know that you've been somewhere before. If you're going a long distance without running into an enemy, there's a pretty good chance you've been there already. But if you let enemies kind of straggle, it might indicate to you that you haven't been there, and it just will require you to think harder about if you were somewhere, look at your map, and it's just confusing. So my recommendation is to kill everything you encounter as you encounter it. Those flying enemies are especially pesky. And you can see here that they're swarming me quite a bit. One thing I don't do enough in this particular game is I still learn how to play it over the last couple days, and in the few hours that I've really sat down with it is, to roll with the circle button more, to kind of dodge and parry a little bit more. It's pretty important because I'm getting pretty hammered in this particular part of the game, no doubt about it. So there I use finally my ice grenade, kind of get wise to the fact that I might need a little bit of help, but you can see the cooldown's pretty significant on it. Still have 11 seconds from when I'm saying this until we can rectify that. But I do opt to heal myself by using L1, using one of my health flasks. So now I still have one health flask in reserve. And remember, once we leave the stage, we'll just be able to refill it. So there's no reason, if you have at least a little bit of confidence in your skill, to not to not use that those health flasks because you need it. Here's another upgrade. We're going to dump it back into red again. You can see that the percentage of hit points that I'm getting back is way lower, but again, we want to strengthen the actual use of the weapon, which will allow us to kill enemies quicker, specifically boss enemies, and it will make it easier. So it's really 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but I'd rather have more strength than just a ton of hit points. Here we get Electric Whip 4, which is a, finally a somewhat useful triangle mapped weapon, but again, not what I'm exactly looking for. Again, I wish that I had the Frost weapon, but I don't. And that's one of the frustrating portions of not only this game, but very similar and like-minded games, is just you're kind of at the will of what the game wants you to do. And you're not really able to, really not what it wants you to do, but really what it wants to give you. And that will greatly affect your ability to get through. There's cool stuff like this in the game should you want to explore it. Sometimes there's a reason to, whether you get some items and indicators or whatever that will help you in the game. But it also kind of expands a little bit of the Dead Cells kind of more obtuse and loose story. So we're going to go into the secret area. Basically what this is just some environmental storytelling, and we're also going to get, just a little bit of money here from this dude's cash register. But basically he looks like he's selling mushrooms to people in his environment here in this prison or whatever this is. I guess it's not a prison, it's more like a barracks. And yes, he is selling psychedelic mushrooms. So there's little things that you find, and what's really interesting with these story-driven rooms and portions of each stage is that they too are randomly generated, so you find them in just different areas in different ways, different permutations. Pretty cool. So we're going to teleport back to the surface and again continue to the east. Slicing and dicing our way through. Two magician enemies, kind of annoying. They can shoot through walls as well. So we're almost to the end, but we're not quite to the end yet. Bunch of enemies to kill down here, so at least we'll be richer for the gold and hopefully get some dead cells as well from the enemies that we kill. We're not stacking, considering how many enemies we're killing here, we're not stacking too many dead cells, but, beggars can't be choosers. Every one of them helps, for sure. Got a little greedy there, as you can see. Gotta take some more damage here. Map to L2 is more of a cannon weapon that I don't really care for, but it does do some nice damage. I think I use it once or twice a little while, but I'm also eager to replace it, and I will replace it shortly with something a little more useful for me, for my tastes. We'll teleport back to the surface and again continue and again continue to the east. Oh yeah, I'm going to the west here. I'm like, why am I going to the west? I forgot. I saw on the map that there's a chicken bone. Or a chicken leg. So there's very rare drops that enemies have sometimes. A chicken leg or a piece of jerky. The jerky heals you 15% of your health, and the leg heals you 80%, I think, of your health. And so if you see those, you don't have to pick them up immediately. You can actually leave them behind for when you actually are in more dire need for them, as long as you're on the same stage. Once you leave the stage, obviously it's gone, and you're never going to see this permutation again until you die and come back. But if you get through a stage, or if you're going through a stage and someone drops a little jerky or a chicken leg or whatever, and your health is full, or you're not quite in need of it, just leave it behind, and then you can always teleport or run back to it later and, rectify the situation when it's most useful. So you really do have to be very tactical in that sense. But we're almost to the end of this stage. We're just working through the rest of it. And as you can see here, tons of upgrades. This is, again, why I didn't want to get rid of this run, because I was just getting so many upgrades. You can see it down in the bottom left, 733. Not too bad for this point in the game. So we're just going to cruise through a few more enemies. Again, these annoying mages. And they're stacked with some skeletons here, so they're doing quite a bit of annoying damage to me. Gotta get through them. So there's that. So I hope you enjoyed the Let's Play so far. We're almost done with it. I just want to show you the boss fight, and then I'm going to let you guys go. But, highly recommended. Again, by the time that you see this, Dead Cells will be just about out, or or out, depending on where you are. And again, on PSN, on Steam, on Xbox Live, and again, I think it's on Switch as well. So you have lots of options. Motion Twin, the developer, the French developer, is giving you lots of options. Now, here's a merchant. We have quite a bit of gold stored up, and so we're able to buy some things. I'm going to buy the Ice Grenade 4, and I'm going to buy the Magnetic Grenade 4 and map those to L2 and R2. So the Magnetic Grenade will replace that, and then I'll replace the weaker Ice Grenade 1 with Ice Grenade 4. And that will just give us a little bit of a boost. And actually, as you see with the boss, who I really struggle with and almost die to yet again, that we need every advantage we can get, and those upgrades might have really been the difference in just a couple of moments of us beating that boss or us not beating the boss. But before we get to the boss, we have to get through the rest of the Ramparts section, and so let's clean up and kill the rest of these enemies, thoroughly explore so we can find upgrades. No reason to rush. But we do find a dead end here, and so we are nearly to the end. And I'm just checking the walls. Sometimes you can smash the walls Castlevania style to find some items in them, but nothing down there. Can't get through this wall yet. I'm not entirely sure if I have to phase through it or something. There might be some sort of item I don't have yet, so can't go down there yet. But we can go to the right here, to this elevator. I'm just admiring the background here. It looks very Castlevania-esque background with that castle turret, that crumbling turret. And we're going to go to the Black Bridge. But of course, before we go to the bridge to fight this boss enemy, we're going to go back to this interstitial area to dump more of our dead cells and refill our health flasks and do all of that kind of stuff. Only 19 cells. As you can see, the Rampart shield that we found, the rare Rampart shield, was added. Once I buy that with cells, it will become available for me to find in the environment. But I'm again going to dump everything into the Health Flask 3 because I really, really want to unlock that. We can get one more mutation. And I'm going to go with the grenade cooldown mutation, which again is probably, along with the new grenades that I just picked up at the storefront, it's going to be the difference between life or death here. No doubt about it. So that will give me a 57% cooldown boost for my grenades. I'll admire the pile of bodies that have stacked up. Those are my bodies. Kind of a self-referential thing. Fill my flasks up here and then head out to the bridge, which is just a stage with a boss on it. So let's let that load. Another beautiful stage. There's tons to like in terms of the aesthetic in this game. So we're going to fight this boss, the Concierge. And the bosses get more difficult as we go forward. They don't fight the same way. They're quite annoying. As you're going to see, this boss battle is going to take me several minutes. But we want to just, roll around and through his attacks. We can roll through his body as well. So what I'm trying to do here is as often as I can use the short cooldown on my L2 and R2 equipped grenades, the Magnetic Grenade and the Ice Grenade, to do some supplemental damage to him. Specifically with the Electric Grenade, the Magnetic Grenade does, little bits of damage to him. The Ice Grenade will freeze him in place for a moment and then slow him down when he comes out of that, which is very helpful, but just for a moment. Since he's a boss character with some heavier statistics, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to fight him. If it was only what's happening here, then this fight would be much more manageable, but he gets much more effective as time goes on and becomes much more annoying. And one of the things that would have been very useful in this fight that would have made it even easier, and I wouldn't have gotten through it just by the skin of my teeth, in fact, is sometimes you encounter different equipment that you can put on yourself that will give you, if an enemy hits you, it'll poison the enemy, or if you dodge an attack, it will make the enemy bleed and stuff like that. I've had those augments a few times that have definitely helped, not only with the lesser kind of minor enemies, but with this Concierge type boss enemy as well that you have to fight. And I just don't have anything like that equipped on me, so I really can only use what I have. And again, you're just kind of at the mercy, not of your skill, but of the mathematical kind of permutations of things that are appearing for you. So you kind of, again, are at the mercy of that, and it's an unfortunate kind of thing in the game that I don't necessarily find that fun, but I know a lot of people that enjoy this genre of game definitely do. So as you can see here, he's now attacking at a much greater clip. He's also causing this fire attack that spreads across the screen that you have to kind of be mindful of. The ice grenades are doing less damage and holding him for fewer moments. And obviously the electric grenade, the magnetic grenade, doesn't seem to be doing as much damage as well. And as he takes more and more damage here, and he gets to kind of a third of his health, he's going to start being much more aggressive. And this is where I really start to lose the plot and almost die. So this is the first time I ever beat the boss. So I'm sorry for my lack of skill here compared to some more elite Dead Cells players. But I'm still new to the game, so give me a break. But at this point, I'm still feeling confident, but then he starts really doing a lot of damage to me. You know, he's jumping right on top of me. I got to get away from him. You know, there you go. You see that my death was kind of fixed because of the upgrade that I had after the first stage, so I'm done with that. Now I'm down. I just used some health as well, so I'm down to just 1 health flask, but he's all over me. And we just kind of got to keep attacking, stay aggressive, keep using the L2 and R2 buttons. As you can see, I keep missing with my grenades, which is a little frustrating. Definitely not an ideal situation for me. But we're getting through. At this point, I didn't expect that I was going to win. I just want to get away from him and use my health. So I do that there. So now I'm out of health. It's really just what he has and what I have, and that's it. So every little bit of health that I'm shaving off of him is getting us closer to the prize. And it's getting hectic and chaotic. That red sphere around him, that area of effect attack that he has is quite annoying as well. And again, if I had the poison or bleeding kind of technique attached to me, then he would be dead by now because he'd be getting so much damage, because frankly I'm getting hit so many times. So it's more of a testament to my own poor skill here. But man, it's coming down to it here. I could feel it as I was playing through. I could just feel it. I didn't think I was going to get him. It gets real close here. Like real close. I stay right on top of him. Look at my health. Almost down, and then I finally take him out. He drops not only a bunch of dead cells, but also a bunch of money and some new things for me to bring back to the interstitial stage that I can earn later. And that basically is the very beginning of Dead Cells, the kind of procedurally generated roguelike Metroidvania, side-scrolling action role-playing game. Lots of different genres that you can call in, but it's a really, really fun game. I highly recommend it, and I think you'll like what you find if you're into these particular genres too. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought of this. Hopefully maybe I'll do one of these every few weeks instead of an episode of SideQuest if you like it. Let me know. I'll see you later. Bye.